Okay, so right here, you're going to have your selection tools kind of up at the top. We'll kind of go into those a little bit more. Your drawing tools, you get your pen tool, your line tool, type tool, shape tools, those types of things. Everything is based on anchor points and paths, okay? So while I'm kind of explaining this, go ahead and just open up Adobe Illustrator, and we'll come back to it, but I'm going to draw some stuff on the board here. So anchor points and paths, okay? The two things that you need to remember about Adobe Illustrator are these definitions, okay? An anchor point, does anybody remember who's taken 305, the definition of an anchor point? Good thing we're reviewing it. Okay, a change in direction in a path. Okay? Now, you can have anchor points that don't change the direction of a path, but they don't need to be there. So I don't count them, okay? Does we know what a path is? Yeah, it's the line that connects two or more anchor points. Okay? And you have to have more than two or more, because if you just have one point, there's no line, right? Okay, now there are 5 different types of anchor points. We don't necessarily have to get into all of those, but you basically have curves and corners, okay, in a bunch of different combinations, okay? And so an anchor point that is a corner doesn't have handlebars, and the line or path segment on either side of that anchor point will be straight, okay? An anchor point that is a curve will have handlebars, and the line on either side of that anchor point will be curved, okay? And so the first rule of Illustrator is only what is selected is affected. And what that means is that I can do things, but it will only affect the stuff that I've chosen for it to affect, okay? For example, if I select this anchor point here, and I hold Shift and I select this anchor point here, this anchor point here and this anchor point here are not selected. And so I can move those other two around, and the other ones are not affected. So only what is selected is affected, okay? Now in this shape, I have an example of those 2 types of anchor points, okay? This is a corner, and I'm going to zoom in on it for us, okay? There are no handlebars. It's just a line. If you want to create corners with your pen tool, you single click, and that creates corners, okay? Now a curve has handlebars, and so with your pen tool, you click and drag, okay? I'm going to add a little bit of a stroke here just so we can kind of see what's going on. And I'm going to make that stroke a different color. Okay. So that's the basics. So here's what I'd like you to do, okay? Let's start with something easy. Right over here on the left, what you will see is these tools, and if the tool has a little white arrow in the lower right-hand corner of that icon, then that means that if you click and hold on that, there's additional tools in that list. These are called your shape tools. You've got your rectangle tool. The rounded rectangle tool is something that I don't know why they keep it around. It's pointless. The ellipse tool, polygon tool, star tool. The polygon tool and the star tool are very similar to each other, but one, all of the sides face outward, and the other one, they alternate going in and out, okay? The flare tool is the quickest way to show people that you don't know anything about anything. So just never use it. It's ugly. 99.9% of the time. Okay, it's kind of like using emboss in Photoshop, or or like you can tell a video person that doesn't know what they're doing, like an amateur video editor, if they like use every transition that exists in the software. And you're just like, how about you just cut and occasionally fade? That's all we need right now, right? So flare tool is kind of bad news. So go ahead and just start with the rectangle tool and click and drag. And what you'll see is that you'll create a rectangle. Your rectangle will probably have a white fill and a 1-point black stroke. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, now you can make a few of these. You can make them tall, you can make them wide. If you click and drag and hold shift, then it will make a square. That's called constraining the proportions. Okay, so make a few rectangles and then make a square. Now, the shift is called a modifier key. Modifier keys are very important. They change what the tool does or alter its function. And it's very important you understand this. You have to be holding the modifier key down at the time that you release the mouse for that modifier key to be applied. So, for example, if I click and drag like this, I can do this all day, and then I can press shift, and you'll notice that it constrains it to a square. But if I let go of the keyboard before I let go of the mouse, then that modifier key was not applied to that shape. Questions on creating a square or a rectangle? Okay, pretty basic so far. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is there are two different selection tools. There's the direct selection tool, which I call the white arrow tool because it's white. And there's the selection tool, which I call the black arrow tool because it's black. Okay. V is the black arrow tool. A is the white arrow tool. The difference is this, and I say this very specifically because it's kind of important. The black arrow tool selects whole things. The white arrow tool selects parts of things. Okay? So if I have the black arrow tool like this, I click on this, it clicked on the entire shape. If I switch to the white arrow tool and I click on this anchor point, it just selected that anchor point. It didn't select anything else. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is take your black arrow tool, select one of those rectangles, and there are a couple different things that'll happen as you kind of mouse over. Your icon will change to show you what it's about to do. So for example, this is called a bounding box, the box that surrounds the outer bounds of a shape that is selected or a group of shapes that are selected. And if I mouse over the corner, it gives me diagonal double facing arrows. That means I'm going to resize that from the corner. If I move just outside of the corner, it gives me a double-headed curved arrow. That tells me I'm going to rotate, right? It's all pretty intuitive nowadays because most software does a very similar thing. But just get used to, just really quick, rotating and resizing this object, right? This rectangle. Everybody there? Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to switch to your white arrow tool. The white arrow tool selects parts of things. All vector objects are made up of two different types of parts. You have the paths or path segments and the anchor points. Okay? And so with your white arrow tool, you can select a path or an anchor point, or you can select a number of paths or anchor points. If you single click on something, then you'll select just that exact thing. If you click and drag, you will select anything that falls under that marquee. So let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to start by deselecting, and you can deselect by clicking in a blank area. So I'm going to deselect there. And again, pay attention to what the cursor is doing, okay? When I'm on my white arrow tool, A, and I mouse over an anchor point, it gives me an anchor point symbol, okay? And that's a square with a little dot in the middle. If I mouse over a path, it gives me a path symbol, which is a filled in square. So I know which one I'm about to click on. Okay, and so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select this anchor point. I'm going to move it close to this other anchor point so that I can show you what that looks like. So what you're seeing on the board now is you're seeing the filled in anchor point is selected. The hollow or empty anchor point is not selected. Okay, so go ahead and select an anchor point and then hold Shift and select a second anchor point and then just kind of move them around. Get a feel for how you can kind of manipulate parts of those shapes by selecting parts of them and then moving them. If you accidentally select or click in the middle of an object with the white arrow tool on the fill, it will assume that you want to select everything. And so it picks all of the anchor points and all of the path segments.
So in that case, it would work the same as the black.
It works very similar to the black arrow tool if you accidentally click the fill instead of one of the anchor points, yeah, in the selection. It doesn't give you the same bounding box that the black arrow tool does, but it will, if I do that, like if I go in here and I click here, and then I start moving this anchor point around, it looks like I'm moving the entire object around. What's actually happening is I'm moving everything that I selected, right? And so yeah, it mostly functions like the black arrow tool if you use the white arrow tool to select a fill.
So if you were working with the white arrow tool, just kind of manipulating the shape, you just wanted to move the entire shape half, and like just move it a little bit, you could just stay on that white arrow tool.
Yep, you can do that. And that's very helpful once you get into groups of things because the black arrow tool will select the entire group. The white arrow tool will select one of the objects in the group. And so that can be a very helpful way of doing things. Yeah. Questions on black arrow tool, white arrow tool? Okay. Now let's talk about fill and stroke. Okay. The fill of an object is the inside color of that object. It's what that object is filled with. Okay. I'm going to increase the weight of my stroke here. And I'm going to change now. You're going to see fill and stroke controls in half a dozen different places. They all control the same thing. And it only controls stuff that is selected. So if I change the fill color down here, or if I change the fill color up here, or if I change the fill color over here, it's all the same thing. Okay, so it's all controlling the fill of whatever objects are selected. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit here, and you can look. This is your fill. It's the square. This is your stroke. It's the empty square or the line. Okay, and there's a couple controls down here that will be really helpful. One is which one of these is active. So the one that's on top is the active one. You can never have your fill and stroke active at the same time. So right now my fill is active, and so if I went to my color palette and I made a change, it would apply that to the fill. If I press X, then my stroke is active, and if I made a change, it would change the stroke. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to, anywhere that you want, it could be in your swatch panel, it could be in your color, it could be up here in the options bar, it could be down here in the lower left of your toolbar. I want you to change your stroke to green. Let's make like a square watermelon, and change your fill to red. I'd like you to have an object that has a green stroke and a red fill. And if you have figured this out and your neighbor seems to be struggling, go ahead and lean over and help your neighbor, literally fulfilling the learning model by teaching one another. Everybody good? Everybody got a green? Yeah. Go ahead.
Make it on my illustrator so that I have all those. Because because you have the toolbars up top and on the side there. How do I make it so I have more? Because it only shows up on this side.
This is a great question. Let me show you guys this. So your Illustrator might look a little bit different than mine. Right up here, when you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says Switch Workspace. I use Essentials Classic. And if you jump into different one of these, it'll look different. You can make your own and save it. But if you go to Essentials Classic, it'll look like yours. If you don't see, like if yours looks like this and there's all of this stuff going on, I find that to kind of be really distracting. So I just kind of collapse it with these double arrows up here. But some people really like this because they don't have to like open any of these panels. So totally personal preference. You guys can do what you want. But if you're looking and I say go to your stroke panel, and you're like, I don't know what that icon looks like or what that panel looks like, all of the panels are under the window menu. And so you can go at any point in time alphabetically and open up one of those panels. And so if I don't know where the stroke panel is, because it's just an overwhelming amount of stuff, I'm just going to go down and I'm going to hit stroke, and it comes up right here. So if it's already checked, it'll close it, and so you can kind of open it like that. If you're doing it like I prefer, then what you'll have is you'll have a series of these little icons, and each one of these icons will just kind of tell you what's going on, right? And so the stroke is these 3 strokes that get progressively larger. Okay, so if you want your shape to look like mine, and let's do that together now, go into your stroke panel, which probably looks like this. Okay, and I hate this about Adobe so much that I have offered extra credit for 10.5 years that I've taught here, and no one has ever figured it out for me. But I'll offer it to you guys as well. If you can figure out a way to, by default, open all of the panels so that I don't have to go into each single one of them and click Show Options or Show More, I will give you extra credit, okay? But nobody's ever been able to figure that because I don't think it's available. But this little hamburger menu up here, they call it a hamburger menu. It's 3 horizontal lines stacked on top of each other. If you click on that, it'll give you Show Options. And then look at all the extra stuff that they were hiding. How mean. Okay, so go ahead and take that and increase the weight of your stroke. Now you will notice that if you don't have something selected, then it won't increase the weight of anything. Is that not logging in for you? Oh, okay. It'll be today will be a lot better if you're doing it with us. You don't have to, I don't care. It's your tuition. Okay, but if you have something selected, you can increase the weight of that stroke or decrease the weight of that stroke by clicking the up or down arrows, right? Or you can click the drop down menu and you can choose one of those strokes. Or you can click inside next to the number and use your arrow keys on your keyboard. So let me show you each one of those. I can come in here and I can single click like that and it'll increase it. Or I can click that down arrow and I can choose one of these, right? Or I can click inside that text box and I can just hold the up or down arrows on my keyboard. They all do the same thing. I'm going to turn my keylogger on so you guys can see what I'm pushing. Okay, does everybody have a big, thick green stroke with the red fill? Okay, so the next thing is, how do you go from a corner to a curve or a curve to a corner? There is a tool that does that for us, and it used to be called the Convert Anchor Point tool, which I think is a very helpful name because it converts curves to corners and corners to curves, converts straight lines to curved lines. It converts. There's another type of anchor point that has a curve on one side and a straight line on the other side, a corner on the other side, a combo. It does all of that. It's underneath your pen tool. So if you see this pen tool over here, or oops, sorry, I'm zoomed in too much. See this pen tool over here, or you press P on your keyboard, that's your pen tool. And you can click and hold, and you will either see the pen tool and the anchor point tool, or you'll see all 4 of these, depending on whether you're in Essentials or Essentials Classic or what mode you're in. anchor point tool, which used to be called the convert anchor point tool, is Shift-C. So all of these little parenthetical things over here, those are all just what the hotkey is. Hotkeys are faster. In this class, I don't expect you guys to memorize those, but if this is software that you're going to learn, I would recommend learning the hotkeys. So I'm going to go Shift-C, okay? And really quick, I'm just going to change the color that we're dealing with here so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to change the stroke to that. Okay, so if I click and drag on a corner anchor point, it'll pull handlebars out of that corner. So go ahead and try that now. On one of the corners, click and drag, and you'll pull handlebars out of that corner. We're in Illustrator today. How's it going? Good. Okay. Now on that curve, single click on the curve, and what you'll notice is that it deletes the anchor point. No, sorry, the anchor point stays, it deletes the handlebars. So it converts it from a curve to a corner. So single click on a corner, converts it to a curve. Sorry, single click on a curve, converts it to a corner. Click and drag on a corner, converts it to a curve. Like that to like that. Okay. So here's how I like to demo things when I'm teaching software. I'll teach you some stuff, and then I'll have you do that stuff. That's the point that we're at now. And then I'll show you something without telling you how to do it, but I'm using all the stuff that you guys already know how to do because I just told it to you 5 minutes ago. Okay, so watch carefully and see if you can figure this out. Ready, go. Okay, I'm seeing about half of you get it. Good. If you figured it out and your neighbor hasn't figured it out yet, go ahead and lean over and help your neighbor. I'm just going to start saying random things. Oh, no. Well, they're all helpful. If you hold shift while you click and drag with the rectangle tool, you'll create a square. If you're rotating something with the rectangle or with the black arrow tool and you hold shift, it'll constrain that rotation to 45 degrees, which will make it so you can rotate a square into a diamond. If you use your white arrow tool, you can select some anchor points and not the others. If you use your convert anchor point tool, which is Shift-C, then you can click and drag on a corner and turn it into a curve.
I think I went about a roundabout way of getting there, but I think I got there.
Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, that's the cool thing about Illustrator and Photoshop is there's like dozens of different ways to do the same thing. They're all fine if you just do the one you like. Okay. Does somebody want a demo on the board for us? Yeah, come on up. You can use my drawing tablet, or you can just use the trackpad here. Yeah, you don't have to use the fancy stuff if you don't want. Go ahead. Do you want this?
Sure, I'll try,
Okay.
I'll try the fancy stuff.
All right. The keyboard still works too, so you can switch with that. Okay, so holding Shift while we click and drag creates a square. Okay, switching to the black arrow tool. Click and drag while holding Shift again, and that constrains it into a 45-degree rotation. Switch to the white arrow tool. We selected by clicking and dragging those two anchor points. You can use the trackpad if you want.
You make it look so easy.
Well, I've been doing it for 20 years. Okay, move those up, and then okay, we'll switch to the Convert Anchor Point tool, which is Shift-C. Click and drag, pull handlebars out of that corner, and click and drag to pull handlebars out of that corner. Good. That's great. Good job.
Fancy.
Well done. Okay, now once you have, let's draw a circle together. So go ahead and draw a circle. The circle is underneath the rectangle tool, and it's called the ellipse tool. And you can get there by pressing L. If you want to do a circle instead of an oval, you just do the same thing. You hold Shift as you click and drag. Okay, so with this one, we have existing handlebars, okay? And so I want to show you the difference between the white arrow tool, okay, and the Convert Anchor Point tool. The white arrow tool, I'm going to pull these handlebars way out just so we have a big handlebars that we can look at, okay? The white arrow tool kind of teeter-totters or seesaws. Is there a difference between teeter-totter and seesaw? I feel like they're the same thing. Okay. So I go like this, right? And when I go up on one side, the other side goes down. When I go down on this side, the other side goes up, okay? That's great. Unbroken curve is what we call that. Shift-C, if I go up on this side, then what happens is now those handlebars are broken. And so now when I can move them independently of each other, okay? And so you want to be very careful when you're adjusting handlebars that you make sure that you're using the tool that you want to use. So if you want to make a shape like this, you want to make like this thing, white arrow tool to work with those handlebars because you want it to kind of flow through. If you want to do something like this or something like this, okay, broken handlebars, that's Shift-C, Convert Anchor Point. And that way I can work on just one side of this curve or the other side of this curve independently of the other one. Okay? Go ahead.
What tool were you using for the handlebars?
So I am using, let me write that down. If I want the handlebars to stay connected, like a teeter-totter, I'm going to use the white arrow tool, A. If I want to break those handlebars so they function independently, I'm going to use Shift-C, which is the anchor point tool. Yeah. So go ahead and make a circle. With your white arrow tool, select the top anchor point and get used to just kind of teeter-tottering those handlebars up and down. And then break the handlebars by by switching over to Shift-C, the anchor point tool, and just click and drag on one of those handlebars again. Okay, and after you get used to that, let's see if you can make this shape out of a circle. And I will leave that selected so you can kind of see how I did that. And raise your hands if you get stuck or have any questions. Oh, that's fun. I like that shape on the right. If you figured it out, your neighbor seems to be struggling, go ahead and lean over and help your neighbor. Okay, just to reiterate, the white arrow tool will keep handlebars teeter-tottering or fused together. And the convert anchor point tool, Shift-C, will break those handlebars apart so they work independently of each other.
You can move that top left-hand bar over to
I can't remember if I did or not. It doesn't look like I did.
You brought it back to where it was.
Oh, I brought it back to where it was? Yeah. So it moved a little bit.
Is it like this?
So grab that one and move that one down. Yep, good there and good. Yep, just like that. Go, go, keep going, keep going, keep going right there. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. So broken handlebars is where you can get a point to a curve, right? And so that's when you do that. Questions on handlebars, curves, corners, selection tools? Good with all that? Yes.
So if you want to make that a hard corner there at the bottom, where it curves on the right-hand side,
On this one?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
would you just click on that and hit convert anchor point on that?
Okay, so are you talking about hard corner on both sides or just one side?
Just the one side there.
So on the one side, what you would do is Shift-C, and then you can shift-click on one of those handlebars. And then it'll delete that one handlebar, but it'll keep the other handlebar. If I single-click on that, it deletes both handlebars. So, yeah. Okay, now you've got this. Let's say that I want teeter-totter handlebars back. I want fused handlebars back. On broken handlebars, see how I've got one handlebar that goes down this way, one handlebar that goes that way. I can Shift-C and I can click and drag and I can pull brand new handlebars out of it. Okay, and so you can pull brand new handlebars out by doing that. Okay, the other thing that you can do with the anchor point tool is you can pull curves out of things. So I'm using my space bar. If you hold the space bar while you click and drag, it'll help you navigate. You can kind of pull. It gives you this little hand where you can kind of pull around your work area. I'm just going to create a rectangle, and then I'm going to press Shift-C, and instead of grabbing the anchor point, I'm going to mouse over, and you'll notice that it gives me this curved path segment. Okay? And so I'm just going to grab that and just whoop, pull it out. Okay? And on one side, just click and drag and pull it. On the other side, pull it while you hold Shift. And you'll notice the difference. Oh, it's not going to give me. Yeah, let's go like that. Oh, give me. Interesting. It's not giving me the view. There we go. So you notice the difference. One side, those handlebars are kind of an average, whereas the other side, the handlebars run parallel to the direction that you were pulling. So that's just with Shift and without. Okay, I'm going to get into two things that some people find a little bit confusing. So I want you to interrupt me the moment you are like, wait, what? Right? As soon as it doesn't make sense, stop me and ask a question, okay? Your classmates will appreciate you for it. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is called the Shape Builder tool. Okay, the Shape Builder tool has add and delete. Okay, that's what it does. It adds and deletes. And it's got 3 different ways to do that, so it has 6 functions. Okay, you can single click, you can click and drag, or you can click and drag while holding shift. Okay, and so let me just show you what I mean by that. If we make ourselves a Venn diagram here. Okay, what you'll see, let me just change color. Okay, what you'll see is that we've got 3 different shapes, but we have 6 intersections, meaning we've got 3 different shapes, but they overlap. Okay, and so in Illustrator, a shape is a closed path. So we've got 3 different closed paths, or 3 different ellipses. Okay, now the Shape Builder tool, it works with intersections. And so if I press Shift-M here, I can mouse over different parts of this. Let me just get rid of my cursor swatch preview here. Okay, I can mouse over different parts of this, and you notice that it highlights the intersection. Okay, let me show you all the functions of this before you guys do it, and then I'll give you a chance to do it. Okay, so if I single click, what you'll notice is that I don't have a stroke that follows that intersection because that intersection is not a shape. But if I single click, it's now a shape. So I can click away, and that's its own shape now. Okay? If I click and drag, it will combine everything that I draw through into a single shape. And so now that's a single shape. Okay? If I click and drag while I hold Shift, instead of drawing a line, it draws a marquee, and every segment that falls inside of that marquee gets combined. Okay? So there's single click, click and drag with Shift. And all of those were adding. Okay? If I hold Alt, then it will delete different parts if I click and drag, or click and drag with Shift. Okay? So let's do this together. What I want you to do is I want you to take your ellipse tool, L, and just create 3 different overlapping circles. You can go into your swatches panel and change the color of those circles just so you can kind of differentiate them a little bit. And then here's the trick. Remember the rule of Illustrator. Only what is selected is affected. And so the first thing that I need to do is I need to take my black arrow tool, V, and I need to click and drag to select all 3 of those. You know that something is selected because it will have the paths and the anchor points will get highlighted for you so you can see them. Okay? And now I want you to try all 6 of those functions, which I will write on the board so that you don't forget. Okay? I want you to try single clicking, clicking and dragging while holding Shift. And then I want you to try all of those things again while holding Alt or Option. So you've got click and drag plus Shift. And we've got the add, where you don't press anything, and we've got the subtract, where you hold down the Alt or Option key on your keyboard while you're doing those things. Yes.
So I'm selecting
Uh-huh.
this, and then,
Yeah, then you need to switch to your shape builder tool.
okay.
So real quick, yep, good. So
It's
first
the-
select, because you just deselected. So
Okay.
V and then click and drag, and then you're gonna go down to shape builder, which is Shift M. That's your shape builder tool, and now it'll do it. Okay, questions on that? Click and drag while holding Shift. And then all three of those same functions when you press the Alt key on your keyboard. Okay, so let's make a cartoon eyeball. You guys ready? Go and watch me do this. I'll talk you through this one because it'll be a little bit harder, but I'm gonna start by making a slightly off-white with a black stroke. And then I'm going to draw a line by clicking with my pen tool. Create a line there. I'm going to get rid of my fill here by activating the fill and pressing the /. Then I'm going to draw a circle here like this. I'm going to give myself a black fill and no stroke. And then I'm going to take a little chunk out of it by creating a shape, clicking on that, and deleting that segment. Then I'm going to give myself a little bit of shading here by clicking and dragging. So if you have your black arrow tool and you click and drag, you can make a copy of something. So I'm going to click and drag like that, and I'm going to get rid of that. And then on this guy over here, nope, this guy, I'm going, let's see. So I want this one. I got to change my color so I can see what's going on. Change it to something else. There we go. Okay. So on my stroke, I can throw this stroke so that it goes to the inside, outside, or straddle. Right now it's centered or straddling. I'm going to throw it to the outside. And then I'm going to take the stroke off of this one, clicking on it /. And then I can take the fill color of this, make it a little bit darker. Now we have a little bit of a shade. And then I'm going to grab these two. Let's grab these three here. And I'm going to single click and single click. And let's see, what do we got going on there? That's got that. All right, so let's get rid of our stroke on here. I think, you know what? Get rid of the stroke and everything. That'll be simpler. Delete these and let's shade this. Okay, go ahead and try that.
I'm stuck at the little eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so instead of manipulating the shape, what I did is I drew another shape with my pen tool and then cut that shape out of the circle.
Okay.
Yep. I gotta take a picture of that. Questions? Okay. So that's the shape builder tool. You can make a lot of things out of the shape builder tool. It's really, really useful. Okay. The other thing, I'll give you guys, I'm going to pause to make sure nobody has any other questions. Okay. The other thing that students find a little bit difficult to understand is the alignment panel, align and distribute. Okay. Align and distribute is over here. And what you will find is, once again, that the, oh my gosh, it's so annoying. So one thing about, what the heck? There we go. One thing about this is frustrating. Okay, is that your panel, until you do show options, will look like this, and we're going to do show options so we can see that, okay? Now what we have here is you've got aligning objects and distributing objects, okay? But you can also align and distribute anchor points, and that's really helpful, especially with pattern making, because you want to be really precise with what's going on there. Okay, so just really quick, what you're seeing over here is that this will align things to, this will align things to the left. This will align the center of the object to the center. This will align the rightmost point of that object or edge of that object to the right. This goes to the top, this goes to the center, this goes to the bottom. Okay? Now, align to is very important. Okay? Because you can align it to the artboard, or you can align it to the selection, and then we'll get into the third one in a minute. Okay? But if I go to my artboard like this, and I make a few shapes, and I select those shapes, let's color them so they're less boring. Okay, I select those shapes. I can throw all those shapes to the left, to the right, to the top of that selection, okay? But if I change this to the artboard, then it goes to the left of the artboard, or the right of the artboard, or the top of the artboard, okay? So that's kind of that. Why don't you guys practice that? Just make 3 or 4 shapes, and then align them in your align panel. It looks like 2 horizontal rectangles being aligned to a vertical line on the left. And again, if you can't find the panel that I'm talking about, you can always go to Window, and then you can open it alphabetically there. Okay, any questions about the basic part of aligning? Notice how you can throw stuff the left, the middle, or the right, or the top, the middle, and the bottom. And remember, everything in Illustrator is two-dimensional, so you're looking at X and Y, the X-axis, the Y-axis. That's why you can put that stuff. So if I have three of the exact same shape, and I center them on the horizontal and center them on the vertical, they'll be in the exact same spot because they're both, that's the origin of that. Good? Okay. The next part of this, I'm gonna change these colors so we can see what's going on. And let's go yellow and green. Okay. The next part of this is key object. So if I click and drag to select these like this, and then I single click on the yellow one, you'll notice that the yellow one now has a thicker selection mark around that shape. That means it's the key object. So normally, without a key object, if I came in here and I pressed align to the top, it seems like it disappeared because I forgot to change it to selection. Let's go align to the top again. Okay, it jumps to where the green one is. Okay, and why, when I align to the top, does the green one not move?
It's already at the top.
Because yeah, it's creating the top, like it's already there, right? Exactly. Okay, same thing as if I align to the right, that the yellow won't move, right? Like that. Okay, but if I go like this, okay, and I click and drag, and then I single click on the yellow, you'll notice that it switches to this key, and this becomes a key object. And now the key object is the one that doesn't move and the one that you're aligning to. So instead of aligning to the artboard or aligning to the selection, I can align to that key object. And so if I go to the right, then everything will jump to the right of that yellow circle. If I go to the left, everything jumps to the left of that yellow circle, the center of that yellow circle, the top of that yellow circle, those types of things. Okay, so go ahead and try with your shapes. Click and drag to select them all, and then single click on one of them. And if it's not on the top, then align to the top, right? So if it's creating the rightmost boundary, it's not going to be any different to align to the right with the key object. So go ahead and just do that selection and watch your key object not move. All right. Now, let's do the same thing, but we're going to do this with anchor points. Okay. So with an anchor point, I'm going to, instead of creating circles here, I'm going to create a star. So if it'll let me, I'm going to click and drag. Why are we not clicking? There we go. I'm going to get a star tool here. Okay. And I'm going to create this star. Okay. Now, if I click on an anchor point with my white arrow tool, and then I shift click on another anchor point, the last anchor point that you click on becomes your key anchor point. And so if I align to the right, then it aligns to that other anchor point that I selected. And this is where it gets very, very useful, because if I click away, click here, shift click here, and shift click here, then I can align both of those that way. Or I can align them both that way. Okay, so go ahead and make a star. The star doesn't have a shortcut key, but it's underneath your shape tools. And then with your white arrow tool, click on one anchor point, and then shift click on one or two more anchor points, and you'll see that you will align to the last anchor point that you selected with the white arrow tool. Okay, questions on that? Okay, those are the basics of Illustrator. I can show you a lot more stuff if anybody has any thing about their patterns that they want to learn or anything else. But does anybody have any questions about any of the basics that we covered today? Selection tools, shape tools, shape builder, convert anchor point tool, alignment, curves, corners, handlebars, fill, stroke. Cool. Okay. Any questions generally on patterns or anything else that I can help you with?
Especially with Illustrator.
Uh-huh.
How do I make it so that I get a guide on the display? Because every time I try to insert a guide, it doesn't let me.
Yeah, so the first thing you need when you get guides is you need to have your ruler up, okay? And so that's Command R to toggle the rulers on and off. But you notice that I just click and drag from my ruler and it looks like nothing shows up. And so that means that you need to show guides. And so that is under View Guides, Show Guides, or it's Command semicolon. And once I do that, then all the guides that I made will show up. You can show or hide with Command semicolon. Is that working?
No, because oh, okay. That was
Cool. Other questions? Yeah.
For that mood shot, you're still wanting us to use the random generator for the mood or emotion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can flip through that as much as you want. So let's go to those instructions. All right, so we'll go courses 315, pattern and complexity. Okay, so mood shot here. Okay, mood shot activity, but focus on pattern and or complexity. So you don't have to do both pattern and complexity, but pattern and or complexity. Okay, and so I'm going to go down into the activity instructions. I'm going to go into the mood shots. Okay. Click on Mood Generator.
And that's a photo or video that we take, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so it's a 10-second video without camera movement or a photo that you take. And so if you want to do some manipulation of that photo, you can, right? That's fine. But if I get a loan, that's an easy one to do, right? Complexity versus simplicity, I would put somebody standing by themselves, and I would have a lot of other people grouped up but not near them, and that would be complexity versus simplicity, right? I could have, dump out a bunch of pepper on a table, spread it all out, put one pepper in the middle, one pepper flake or crystal, I don't know what those are, flake, I think, in the middle, and then that would show complexity versus simplicity alone, right? Let's randomize it again. Lost, okay? You could find really complex street thing on your phone, on the map of your phone, and then you could show somebody just being, I don't know, somewhere that is obviously not very civilized, like the desert or the sand dunes or something, but the phone is showing just this spider web of roads, right? So you'd have complexity versus simplicity. Desperate, that would be a little bit harder. Jaded. Smothered, right? Complexity versus simplicity. Okay, and I don't care if you do mood or emotion. You can do either one for this. So, yeah. There was an activity, not necessarily that you guys have to do, but there's an activity that they used to do in Com 130 about 10 years ago, and I really like it. It's basically like only using squares, and then they do a random emotion generator. So it's like show joy, but only with the squares. right? Show terror, but only with squares, right? And then you just have to figure out size and proximity and those types of things to kind of do that. So it's a similar thing. Okay, good question. Other questions? Okay. Does anybody need any help on the master study pattern? Happy to do that. I started one and I want to show you guys because I finished it and it looks cool. So I made this one. Kind of fun. And so I made it so I had this reference and then I used these things. I made this guy and now I can go in and I go like this and then I can fill it with, can't remember which one it is. I'm inside of a thing. Hold on, let me get out of that. And we'll go back over here, okay. And I go like this, and then I can fill it with whichever one that is. I'm not sure which one. It's not any of those. I don't want to double click them. Get out. This one probably. And now it's not selected anymore. There we go. So I thought that was kind of fun. That was kind of a fun one. And not that you guys have to do this, but you can do this. If you go into Object, Envelope Distort, Envelope Options, then you can go Distort Pattern Fills. And then you can go into Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp. And you can come in and you can do all kinds of different distortions of your pattern, which is kind of cool. Anybody need any help with their patterns?
Can you see where you went for the distort again?
Yeah, Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp. You can also do Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Mesh. Okay, if you guys want time to work, you can work. I'll hang out for a few minutes. If you want to go, you can go. And next week we'll do something totally different. It'll be fun.